All right, hey everybody, Booksy here. This is an update on AMC for November 24th. Tomorrow, we do not have a trading day due to the Thanksgiving holiday, and then I think Friday's a half day. It's kind of odd, and this is what I'm seeing today. Basically, just get right into it. So we had a sort of a revelation, if you will, about the purpose of the T tests being basically to get us back and retest the major trend lines that are created during this particular catch, which is sort of like part one, right? We talked about how after the R's, okay, which are your bull runs, the R1 being like a major liquidity test, and then R2 is not really major, but typically heading into R4, you do get another boost. But then after that, we see a sell-off typically because the purpose of these is to get us to our distribution zone, wherever that's going to be. And for the past, 7 months or whatever, we've been in this giant wedge, and so they've kind of always directed us back to the top of the wedge. But we found yesterday that if you missed it, and I did a lot more analysis on this, basically, when this falls down, okay, we have a pretty volatile range for a bit, and then we typically always see this, and it happens every time the same way, is you get this kind of pump and dump head and shoulders pattern, okay, same thing over here, and then so you get these hard falls, right, from like way up high. The B4 is kind of the first test, the bottom, and then you end up with a consolidation, you get a little pump and dump, and then I was calling this the catch, and I'm calling it the catch because it actually just kind of is like a stopping point to get us ready for the T's, which are liquidity tests that are specifically testing this range that was established. And then we also noted that they typically test the bottoms of the wedge. So it's kind of like hitting the brakes before we go to test the bottoms. So that being said, our catch was up here, all right, and it didn't really look like much of a wedge at all. I mean, there was sort of a wedge pattern here. You could draw it like a bunch of different ways, but I mapped it out and we found where we were kind of in previous fractals, and then we boosted up into the T1. And the T1 and T2, again, they looked a lot like they did here, which is back at the end of October. But then after that, when we got to the sell-off period for the T2, it deviated a lot. And it actually looked more like the August T's, and that's what I did in the previous video. I'm not going to do that all over again. But essentially, like, this region I noted was really kind of pointless. Like, I mean, the purpose of this was, sure, you get some tests that happen, but mostly it's to drive you to whatever the trend line may be. And in our case, the trend line was downward facing, so it drove us down. And so I don't really consider. I said there's like this 1, 2, 3 drop, and we saw that 1, 2, 3, and then we saw another 1, 2, 3, and then that was kind of it. And I said that maybe we have to go down another leg, maybe we go down a second leg, because a lot of people are calling for this fib level. We might still see it. We don't know for sure. Maybe it needs to touch it before we continue up to T3. But today, pretty simple. I mean, I don't know. I got messages early. People were kind of concerned. I wasn't watching the market today. I was out with my family and enjoying the weather and just living life. I mean, that's the whole point of this, right? It's like not to sit here and fractal all day, but hopefully this is like a means to an end, right? To better understand this stock and what's going on, and then yeah, at the end of the day, you're gonna make money and hopefully spend more time with people that you love. So this right here, to me, was pretty clear, and I think I pointed this out yesterday. At first, I was confused because this region, where it says A, this region looks a lot like, I'm going to have to go to a different time frame really quick. Just bear with me. This region right here looked a lot like this catch that happened on this T cycle right here, this part of on this cycle in the T's. And it threw me for a loop because, you know, and I'm not going to zoom in on it, but if you were to zoom in on this, you would see that it kind of runs up and then plateaus. And I thought maybe that's it, you know, and I was wrong. It wasn't there. I mean, and the thing is on some of these, the patterns are clearer than others. And again, you kind of have to, it's sort of like averaging a visual pattern in your brain, basically, you know, to try to sort of put it together. And I've gotten pretty good at it, but there are some times where I just get really thrown off, and I'm not really sure until I see like one of the other cycles, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's where that came from. All right. So, anyways, where are we? So, when I saw this pattern right here, this kind of run up, this U shape, and run down, I mean, it just looks so similar, and then it's kind of like, well, who cares what came before? It's some kind of a bottom. Maybe this is a very frequent pattern that we see. It doesn't have to be exact all the time, but this definitely made a lot of sense to me. And there's clear like markers for it in terms of volume. And the volume, it's kind of juxtaposed a little here, but you know, it's this big giant, and you can just see it, this huge cell into F, right? Into E and then into F. And this looks like it's like a big cell and then a swoop up, right? A big cell and then a swoop up. And there's some rattling around that happens in here before it goes up, just like we saw here, where you're kind of navigating whatever trend you're on. And I don't really know if that was the big thing, or if it was the fact that we did hit those tests, right? And I think I was tweeting about it, but I said, I don't think we need to go down anymore. I just don't think it's necessary. Doesn't mean we won't, but I don't think it's necessary. And I left early in the day saying that we were on maybe F or something. And I said, you know, there's plenty of like down here that we might have to deal with. And so depending on volume, you know, these downs and ups can be very different from cycle to cycle. So we have to sort of be prepared for some variation. But let me just talk really quick about my thinking in this. You know, when I look at these things, I look at these really obvious patterns. And if I were to take this and squish it and bring that up, you know, it look exactly like this. So you have from D to E, you sell off. You get a hard stop, you rattle around, you go up to F, hard stop, rattle around, go up to F. And this is kind of where we took off for the day. So I have 1, 2, and then down to G. 1, 2, and then down to G. I'm going to stretch this out. 1, 2, and then down to G. Right? 1, 2, and then down to G. G kind of has a couple little maybe bottoms. All right, but the big thing here was this 1, 2 up. Okay. 1, 2 up. 1, 2 up. And I want you to notice, I'm going to do something really, really quick so you can see it. Notice that the first one doesn't come close to 1 or 2. You see that? And then look over here. It's below, right? Just slightly higher. And then the second one, the second little bounce here is actually above 1 and 2. So that's kind of interesting. So maybe it's something about testing these ranges, right? And you kind of get like a double bottom almost on these. And this goes slightly lower, and then this is slightly higher, and this is slightly lower, and slightly higher. And then when you're coming back up, you're going above the previous 2 tests on the second bounce. You go into H, and then we have a bigger sell-off down to I. At first, I thought that this whole area right here may have been compressed in this bounce. So it would look like this. I wasn't sure. I just kind of put it there, but I actually don't think that's the case. And it still could be the case, but the thing is this right here, if this is this move, okay, if this right here is this move right here, and we'll find out on Friday, then we're kind of lacking conviction with volume. Let me show you what I mean. So we don't really get a strong volume sell-off here. And I'm just seeing like a huge volume sell-off here, okay? And it could just be asynchronous, like it's not working. This doesn't really make sense either, because even though there's strong volume before and then after, this volume just doesn't really sell me on this. And I think that probably what we're seeing is this right here is actually playing out just over a longer period of time. And you can kind of see this up-down movement as it goes up. See that? See this kind of wedge that formed, and then it broke out? If you were to zoom way in here, you see that same wedge, and then it breaks out and it starts cascading down. Where does this go? Well, this is tricky, because if you look at I, okay, in this case, it went below I. And maybe the qualifier is that it needs to go back down and test some previous region. Or, and if you look here, you see this, how this broke out of the trend that it was on? Or it could be that it really just needs to break this trend. And I'm leaning towards that right now, as opposed to having to go way down past I. If that happens, it's going to look like maybe like this. I mean, if it were like 1-to-1, right? Certainly that's possible. The question. But I'm kind of leaning towards maybe this is not as important. This is just kind of a test to get this sort of bounce. This is sort of a spring, right? So whether or not it goes down to 38.5 or down to beyond that, even down here, like it doesn't make a huge difference. I don't foresee it dropping all the way down to that, test that major trend line. I don't have it drawn up. If it did, I'd be kind of surprised. Maybe it would happen really early in the morning and then our gaps down or something. I don't know. And then it just kind of fills it up to here, this platform, and then we go up. So where do I think we're going to go from here? Well, I think no matter what happens on Friday, it's probably going to be a max pain type deal. And I think this run up to 40 is pretty likely. Not for sure, but let's say that this is, again, like, I think this is a half day, right? It doesn't go as far, but perhaps it runs up even pretty early. Maybe we drop. Everybody's like, oh no, and then we run up. And then basically we kind of just base here. This would make a lot of sense to me. And maybe like towards the end of that half day, maybe we get a little bit of a push. Okay, that kind of sets us up. So basically a run up, and we're talking about essentially what amounts to like a bull flag, right? Sometimes it looks more like a bull than it does like a flag, but you could draw either way. Okay. See? So I think that's probably my estimation of what's going to really happen on Friday. And the reason I think that is because I don't think they're going to want to gamma ramp on Friday. If we did, let's say they go past max pain, this move right here could be pretty ugly. So if it drives, let's say it goes up, and like let's say they don't want to exceed like a higher value, like 41 or something. Maybe they do that, and then this sell off here, this kind of rattling sell off, ends up being pretty big, right? Because we have to find a base somewhere. It could be here, it could be the top of this, up at like just under 40. This is certainly possible, and then maybe it's flat into the end of the day. But if we were to get a gamma ramp, like a real one, and it's possible. I don't see it as likely, because they're trying to make money, right? I mean, you could see this easily going up and basically breaking out here, testing maybe this old trend line, right? And that could be like the support. and then heading up towards the top. And then on Monday, we'd be set up to just break out. I do want to note this R1 happened on the very next trading day. So this run up happens, and then the next trading day, it's just like explosive, right? So right now, outside of just general price predictions, I do anticipate T3 on Friday on that half day. So that's my hope anyways. So you all have a good Thanksgiving, and we'll talk again. All right, bye-bye.